had a wonderful signature series already come out about Scarlett, about her family, about her experience growing up and everything, and looking forward to seeing some more of those signature series coming on out.
ByuN had one years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A while ago, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're all really good. So always nice to see a little glimpse into the players' lives. As we see so much of them on the stage, as you're pointing out, both of them champions. ByuN was teamless. That was awesome. He was also, I guess, the, kind of like history is almost kinder to his BlizzCon championship than even at the time. Like, people loved it, right? It was a great story, but then there was always like a couple of people that were like, well, Reapers, that was the reason. And then it turned out that actually ByuN was just super special. Like, even that everyone could actually replicate the way that he used Reapers. So when he comes back from the military, everyone's like, well, what is mechanics going to be like? Can he micro like he did? Can he micro Jackson like he did? And apparently the answer is yes, and he caught up very easily with the meta as well, and is still looking to prove himself an individual. He has a lot of those interesting openers, specifically in this matchup.
I love watching ByuN, specifically in Terran versus Zerg, just because I feel like in this matchup specifically, he has these wonderful moments that are also very frightening for all of his opponents, where he has a normal looking set of units, he's doing a light pressure, and then suddenly it's just like ByuN dials it up to 11 with his micro, takes a phenomenal engagement, not just a good engagement, he takes a stellar engagement, and the Zerg player suddenly realizes, wait, I don't have enough Banelings anymore. I'm actually in a lot of trouble. You start getting the Marines start stepping on your Queens, you start losing everything, and the game just ends in a moment.
I mean, I remember back before ByuN had actually come back at Return to StarCraft 2, when Clam was doing exactly what you just described, many of us would be like, it's almost ByuN-esque. And now it's almost like turned around, where you could be like, well, ByuN's playing almost Clem-esque, but of course he was maybe the OG. But we do have him fighting an Overlord, so this is what was really particular about ByuN's TVZ openers, right? So more so than any other Terran, he will not open up with the reactored Hellions just from the get-go. Maybe one or two Reapers, sure, and Hellions, no, not even that. But actually going into perhaps drops, perhaps more Marines than you would expect, then transferring over as we see right here. And really, a lot of the goal is just to confuse and bewilder the Zerg player. They're going to not just lose access to the actual build opening scout. They're going to be like, is it a drop? Is it going into those Hellions? Is it something really random? But then also in the future, because these are also going to be able to pick off Overlords throughout the middle, maybe even a Creep Tumor. There you have it. And that's just going to help the mid-game as well. But Scarlett building 14 Lings, I mean, she'll certainly take care of these Marines. Maybe ByuN wants to leave.
Very unlikely these Marines should be able to get back home safely as Zergling speed kicks on in, and those Marines have a very long journey to head back home. I actually like the idea of just sending them to the Xel'Naga Watchtower and getting to a nice little choke point that makes it difficult for them to pick off cost efficiently. But the Lings run straight over to the natural, and Scarlett is met with 4 Hellions already ready and rearing to go.
I'm not even sure that I mean, she does manage to find maybe 1 Hellion. Okay, just kidding. Maybe not. Maybe 1 SCV. All right, at least grab that. But it's not even that, sometimes you do have Zerg players that make kind of a link swell exactly at that time, and really one of the purposes is to find those Hellions not being controlled correctly, or the Hellions be out on the map if it was a Hellion opener. In this case, I wouldn't be surprised if Scarlett was kind of hopeful that it just wasn't into Hellions, that it was actually like 8 Marines about to be uploaded into the medevac, and I guess 4 on the map, right? But instead finding Hellions ready, controlled, able to deny any SCV kills or many SCV kills. That's not exactly the start necessarily that Scarlett wanted.
Definitely not. Now, there is going to be that follow-up of Cloak coming out with the Banshees also being added on. Scarlett, I think, also usually known for her creep spread, is just starting to get that creep connected between the natural and the third base. It's going to be of vital importance in making sure she can deflect some of these Hellions and making sure the Queens are all in position, because she has been focusing on getting some of those forward creep tumors instead. The first Banshee is going to be heading its way over to the natural, where the Queens are most certainly not, and the Spores very, very late in regard to this.
Yeah. Does seem like Scarlett is maybe the one caught more off guard against her teammate. When you do have 2 players on a team, right, we talk about perhaps the practice that they have against each other, how much they know against each other, but then always got to step back. In StarCraft 2, maybe that doesn't happen with every single team. Well, even without their team, both being represented by Shopify Rebellion, it does feel like they would just be players that know each other very well. So it is a game of mind games. So Scarlett might just be losing that a little bit. Can her mechanics kind of make up for it? Sometimes. Can her own decision-making surprise ByuN? Of course. But in this case, Scarlett losing 9 drones after already making an unsuccessful round of Lings. It doesn't necessarily feel like the best start. Maybe if this Banshee had actually suicided, that would have been better.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point to make, and just I think most people would look at these two players and say that when it comes to the micro, which is something you just kind of have, you don't, right? It's not something you can really just say, well, suddenly in the moment, I'm going to start making better strategic decisions, right? That's something you can do. You can't really just say, suddenly in the moment, I'm just going to start microing like an absolute god. It's a lot harder to make that happen. So I do feel like coming into this match, I was expecting Scarlett to maybe have a little bit of the better end on head games and sort of just predicting her opponent, knowing her teammate, coming up with really smart choices and stuff, which I think is oftentimes her strength. It is going to be a little bit tough if she is not really getting the better end on that, I think.
Yes, yeah. And I actually like to take away the individual player names for a second. I know that Wardy always makes it a point to mention that Scarlett just, a lot of the time that she'll have these like cool TVZs, but against the Korean Terrans especially, it's a lot about does she take too much damage in the early game. So we saw her basically successfully defend against Innovation, for instance, that very cool 3-2 that they had in the season finals, but then she ended up losing because she did start taking damage. So that's like one of the questions we have for Scarlett. In this game, did she take catastrophic damage? Perhaps not. Perhaps not, but certainly ByuN can feel decent about this game. As you can see, the resources loss does favor ByuN, and he's already starting the pressure with this tank.
Not bad at all, and we're going to start to see these Marines stimming on forward, cleaning up some of these creep teamers, joined by the tank. The flank coming in from behind from Scarlett. The Lings getting a surround on that siege tank. Banelings looking for those Marines off of creep. ByuN continuing to stutter step back, focus firing down those Banelings, getting the siege tank to even get a couple of final shots off. Scarlett does retreat on back with her queens and the remainder of those Banelings. But I think ByuN's still going to be pretty happy with how these trades have gone so far. Yeah,
Scarlett really probably hoping that the Banelings would get a little bit more of a surround or maybe be just enough far away from the tank to not have that one last shot. But it is what it is. Hopefully there's more Banelings to come. 1-1's about to finish for actually both parties at this point. And there's another wraparound. In fact, this time the Banelings absolutely gunning for those Marines. And a couple of last-second attempts at micro there almost saved another handful, another medevac's worth, but not quite. ByuN forced to evacuate.
The final Baneling connecting on those Marines, really the saving grace there, as I feel like that siege tank being able to focus fire down some of those Banelings really made that a scary situation for Scarlett. But ByuN being forced to evacuate is going to be a nice little saving grace there for Scarlett, just because she now has a little bit more breathing room. She can start focusing on respreading that creep, and you can already see she is thinking about those transitionary points. She's starting on her 2-2. She's getting the infestation pit already and adding on some of those Hydras, which is going to make it a lot more difficult if ByuN decides to start doing some of those drops.
It will, yeah. I mean, it's still definitely going to be worth it just to try and make sure that the Zerg kind of is kept under your thumb, right? So ideally going into those lurkers, those Zergs are when they set up this, and if that gets there, then so be it, but it's way, way worse if the lurkers are then able to go across the map as well. So these drops still very important in their own right, even if not necessarily doing the most direct damage. In this case, 10 drones have gone down. Even a rally of Hydras very awkward here. Expensive units to lose like that.
Not the ideal kind of situation here for Scarlett with these trades, but she is going to be able to get a nice cleanup on those Marines, unloading at the medevac. Even ByuN is going to be a little bit multitasked by how many places he's trying to attack from. The Banshees getting additional damage on 14 workers going down in the last minute or two, and the Marines stutter step forward as they stim, pick off a lot of these creep numbers, and get in close enough that they're actually attacking the hatchery. They're going to start going for it, gunning it down. Transfuse is not going to be able to save the day, and Scarlett just does not have her reinforcements here fast enough to even force a pickup, much less really actually do anything to that army.
Yeah, that would have been lovely to have a punish, basically, but in another way, I guess it's okay that Scarlett didn't lose maybe more in an effort to defend what was ultimately a dead hatchery, right? So going to be able to replace that, still trying to get up to that hive. ByuN's side of the map, a 4th CC is going down, so not only showing the micro and multitasking that we know ByuN for, but also getting into that macro stage has become, it feels like, more talk of the town for TVZ. How do the Terrans take on mid to late game, as well as perhaps, Maru? And a lot of times it's a lot dependent on those ghosts.
Very much so, and it can be a very control-intensive army. Thankfully for ByuN, he's quite good at that. Now, Scarlett, also, I have to say, even though it hasn't been the most ideal game for her so far. She has been getting at that healthy drone count. She's been maintaining that even with some of the drone losses and everything. I think it's a little bit unfortunate that a lot of the creep spread has receded very close to both of the hatcheries that she has on either end of the map. But I think that if she's able to get at that lurker den, she's able to take a couple of good trades, she's still going to be in a pretty reasonable spot.
Ooh, those would have mines. At least one of them getting a fairly juicy shot on top of those lings. But it looks like this force will temporarily be repelled. Often very awkward to find a single tank trying to hold down any position this late in the game. He just gets overwhelmed so easily. But in that case, actually being just the perfect anchor. Maybe similar here, just the Widow Mines really being a true threat. But the tank helping just in case they aren't enough. And the rest of the ByuN now spilling forth, cleaning up that creep spread that only recently got replanted. And yet again, this base is under fire.
Already going down to the yellow, but the Baneling's going to be enough of a threat. This is a lot further onto creep than the previous engagement, so ByuN has to respect it to a degree. The one siege going to be trying to be a bit of an anchor, but Medevac's going to be going down to the Hydras over here. The Widow Mines getting some good connections, but also friendly firing a bit. And Scarlett, she is getting forced back as she takes the engagements off of creep. That Denatry on the north side going to be in a lot of trouble now.
Yeah, the real problem was that, I mean, yeah, ByuN was unloading into Banelings. That looked great for Scarlett. The other side of the map, this particular push, that was actually going well for ByuN. Having Scarlett chase that far off of creep, she lost a lot of the Banelings, having trouble really replacing everything in time, too. Not able to quite spend all of her money. It'd be much easier if she could actually get into those lurkers. 8 of them do start forming, but they actually need more time. Lynx desperately trying to stop the bio that is so weak, by the way. And ByuN knows the plan. He goes for the what am I drops, targets the middle of the lurkers, and every one of them gets canceled. That was Scarlett's last lifeline. Without those, she probably just loses the game.
Slitting the last chance out of Scarlett's wrist. She goes down in game number 1. ByuN massacres Scarlett toward the end of that game. It was a close start. The Scarlett, you could see, was just falling a little bit further behind, and ByuN just relentless when he's able to just unleash that kill move.
That was really sick, too. I mean, there is actually absolutely a world where 8 lurkers pop and burrow, and that very weak army, of course, has to disengage. And while it's still not an easy game for Scarlett at that point, it does really change the pace when you get into those lurkers. But by denying that, that was truly the last lifeline, as I said, that Scarlett had, was an attempt to make that pace different. Instead, it is cut short, and ByuN gets another highlight moment on his reel, right?
And that is such a scary thing about ByuN. He's able to seize those kind of moments, those micro moments in the individual moment. I think a lot of players would not think to load up 2 Widow Mines and then heading them in over there. I think we might actually even have a, was that a replay?
A replay, it was so
replay
sick.
of that moment in case you missed it, in case you just tuned in. We had the moment over here. ByuN putting some pressure forward. The Hydras move off to the right and they start morphing the lurkers because Scarlett knows she needs them ASAP. She uses the links to buy time. So theoretically, there's a force-fueled wall in front of all those lurkers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There should be, but then the pickup in the midst of that, realizing that was her plan, absolutely beautiful. If Scarlett had thought of that being even a possibility, and who would, right? Then she would have split her lurkers and only half of them get destroyed, which might still be enough, but still. But of course, no one really would have expected that to happen. The fact that he knew also that it was going to be 2 Widow Mines to get all the cancels, I mean, he's probably seen that effect. This guy plays so many games, but it's also always just that kind of perfect right amounts to end the game in such a fashion. That's what gets put in the highlight reel. But I'm sure these 2 are going to have a lot more moments in this best of 3.
Yeah, Scarlett did have a rough start in that last game, and you were mentioning before, how does the game go for Scarlett against a lot of these Korean Terran players? It's about how much damage she's taking in that earlier stage, so she's going to have a second opportunity as we move into game number 2. That is the beautiful thing about StarCraft Best Ofs, is that you start each game fresh and without any of the encumbrances of the previous games. You can make this game work. There's still a chance. We're going to be starting up here on the top left-hand side of Berlingrad. Top of the red Terran player from Shopify Rebellion. He is ByuN.
And in the bottom right, as the blue Zerg also repping that Shopify Rebellion, she is Scarlett.
Do you think if we just continue to delay the intros, that guitar riff will go over and over and over again?
We tested this with DreamHacks, didn't we? I 100% remember this, that we tested. We were like, what if it just kept going? Do you think it's on a loop? And like, I think DreamHack even actually kind of just went toe-to-toe with us. They're like, oh yeah, we'll keep going.
That's pretty incredible. All right, so, well, again, it's going to be heading into game number 2. Scarlett did not get the better end of some of those openings. The Marine pressure not only shutting down the Overlord vision that you were talking about in the game number 1 Zombie Grub, making things a little bit more difficult scouting-wise, but even after the scout, there was just the Marines moving across the map, poking and prodding, finding a creep tumor, Scarlett forcing out a bunch of lings, but then not finding any damage with them. Just everything seemed to go wrong very early on.
Yeah, it was all those kind of tiny build-ups that, again, did not put Scarlett into this unwinnable position. Major comeback had to happen, but certainly still put her a little bit under ByuN's thumb, which is really what he loves doing when he opens up in such a fashion. Ditto here. We see the barracks actually slightly pushed behind the wall. That would usually happen, right? So what's going to happen is Scarlett might have a little panic moment. Now, she might know ByuN well enough to say, like, you can trick me. I'm going to go a little bit deeper with that Overlord. But initially, it could be panic, and actually, that could be a lot of panic.
That is a bit unfortunate, especially since she doesn't even really go to scout out the command center location.
There we go.
Sends it back in, is going to confirm there is a command center behind this. So she did start up a few lings. It's not going to be a crazy, crazy number, and that should hopefully also be useful if ByuN decides to say, use these 2 Marines to go poke out the Overlord.
Oh, actually not going to do that.
You know, it is important to note, a lot of people don't know this, but the Overlord has higher vision range than a lot of buildings or other units like the Terran has. So it is possible to send that Overlord forward and get vision without being revealed, but ByuN should know it exists.
I mean, I think we actually might have seen one of those, like, I know that he knows that I know that he knows kind of situation, which is that, you know, she really couldn't dip too much deeper with an Overlord without then losing it to 2 to 4 Marines, even with that little pillar there. Because if she had been just like, wait a second, and then really went in, yeah, they probably would have died, but she pulled back at the right second. And actually, with this opener and the ling, not going to get any further information yet again, but I do like this different response. It's a different attempt to punish what ByuN has been doing. A Roach Warren is on the way. So it's not going to be that, aha, gotcha, Hellions will defeat Lings. Hellions do not defeat Roaches. Scarlett is going to get supply blocked. She's going to have a little bit of trouble with these Marines, but I think paramount right now for her is just not to let her build be scouted. Maybe not lose that Queen either. That is getting really close. Actually, okay, I was actually kind of worried that Queen would then force the Marines to dive after her and scout the Roach Warren.
That would have been very unfortunate, and Scarlett's Overlords do finish up. She's got 66 supply to work with now, fires up those 8 Roaches, and is going to be sending them straight across the map. There is a Banshee with Cloak on the way, though. That means that whatever kind of attack that Scarlett tries to do with these Roaches is going to have a little bit of a timer, and the Hellions are even moving across the map. It's not going to be Roaches finding the Hellions in the middle. It's going to be Hellions finding the Roaches on Scarlett's side of the map.
Yeah, this is actually still kind of turning not as brilliant as you would hope as a Scarlett fan, actually, especially with the Hellions just getting on in. Going after the drones, good attempt at a block, actually successful block with the drones, well, temporarily anyways. So this is actually going from bad to worse. Scarlett losing her entire natural mineral line.
The Roaches back.
And, well, having to pull at least some of them, and the Banshee is going to actually stop these Roaches. She's pretty desperate to get some return damage, and she will a little bit, but the Banshees will eventually clean this up. If ByuN figures this out, he should have, right? I'm actually kind of surprised not pulling the SCVs to the main base already.
I guess he's got a little bit of time. He's still got a fresh mule over here he wants to mine a little bit longer with. The Roaches starting to get picked off by that Banshee. There's another Banshee that's already about halfway done. Stim is on the way. There's the lift up with all those SCVs heading over to the main base. Hellions and Marines going to be greeting these Roaches and Ravagers at the top of the ramp, and this is a disastrous start for Scarlett.
Yeah, exactly. That's just no other way to put it. This was not the start she wanted at all. As she tries to find a little bit more damage here, she will, but it's still not a very good game for a Zerg player when you see this situation happen. So Scarlett was probably hoping yet again that while it might be Hellions to cover any potential Ling flood, that maybe it was going to be a medevac. So I keep bringing this up and it hasn't happened yet, but absolutely ByuN has gone for medevac builds more so than the Banshees. But in this case, the Banshees were a perfect response to the Roaches, and with the extra scouting, with the extra damage, Scarlett just kind of accidentally puts herself behind and then takes even further damage. Now having too few Queens, no detection, this continues to spiral out of control.
There it is. GG gets called. ByuN takes a dominating 2-0 victory there.